Okay, hi everyone, and welcome to our LSA Forum for October 2022. And Miss Mita, do you want to go through the forum decorum, and I'll get our slides up and ready to go.
All right, okay. So please, can you make sure that all the mics are muted to ensure that the speakers can be heard? If you have a question, just post it in the chat box. We will monitor and highlight the question. Please listen to the presentation and then add your comment if you need to. Now, please keep focused on student practices. We will not discuss individual schools or cases. If you have a question that you post in the chat, do not mention any specific names of students or schools. We are recording this session just so that you. Right. So, Miss Catherine.
Okay, so today we are going to look at behavior management and meaningful support for students. And Miss Mita and myself will share the presentation today. So welcome everyone, and we hope that it will be of use. As always, all of our sessions are recorded and they're all available on our YouTube channel, freely available to everyone. So I've put that in the chat and you can access all of the previous recordings also. So behavior management for schools, Miss Vita.
Right. So what does disruptive behavior look like for you in the classroom? What do you think the reason is? Have a think about it. What does disruptive behavior look like? Is the student tired, hungry, ill, or has he got an individual need? Is it language, or is it because the task or the work that you have set him is too big or for him to comprehend? So think about all of this. Thank you, Jojo, for angry and mad. Now, any of these reasons could be the reason for disruptive behavior. Okay, next slide, Miss Catherine. All right.
So supporting students, how can we work to really support our students in a meaningful way? And sometimes it's the really simple things that have the most impact when a student is engaging in behavior that we don't want to see. And I always say, start with the really practical things. I always ask, is the student tired? Are they hungry? Are they ill? And then look to special needs. Maybe there's a special need there.
Right. Can somebody please mute their mic? Somebody is, their mic is not muted. Can you please mute it?
I've got it, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Right. So now, basically today, since we only have a short time before Ms. Vidya joins us, I'm just going to quickly run through some strategies that you can use when you see, this is just a general overview. I will do Catherine and I will do one session on behavior management because we find that that is very, very important. And we will do an in-depth session for you. So now let me just give you some key strategies so that you can use them in the classroom to support your learner. First of all, always be very clear about the task that you are setting the child. Do not give the child, especially when you know that the child is prone to disruptive behavior, do not give the child 3 or 4 tasks at one go. Clarify the task. What is it that you want the child to do? When you are clarifying the task, you can also at the same time explain the steps that the child can take to achieve the task. How can he achieve the task? What can you do? First, you can say, get a pencil, then get your book, sit down. And what I want you to do is I want you to write these 3 words. So you are very clear, you are very structured in your presentation to the child, in your explanation. Then present the task in chunks. Don't give the whole passage to the child. For example, if you're asking the child to do a comprehension, chunk the work. Chunking is really a very good way to support the child who is struggling to read. Now, you know this child cannot read, cannot process the whole passage. So break it up into part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, part 5. Then take each task at one time and say, all right, let's tackle task 1. Once you're finished with task 1, if the child requires a break, give them a brain break and then go on to task 2. Before you start task 2, review task 1 so that the child can see that there is a connection. He can understand that it's actually one whole big task, but what you're doing is that you are making the task into chunks. So when you do things like reviewing the task, going back to task 1, you are giving the child skills to understand how to tackle a problem. Don't do the work for the child. It doesn't solve the problem. But if you give the child the skills to work with give the child skills, he can apply these skills to any other problems. So that's the one thing I always discourage all the LSAs to do. Don't do the work for him. Sometimes it takes longer, but allow them to get the job done on their own. All right, then highlight the essential information. So this is again another essential skills that we need to teach the children. So what they can do is they can pick out what is important in a task given to them. Repeat directions if necessary, even if you have to tell them 3 times, 4 times, keep repeating them until you are sure that the child has understood. And the best way to check that the child has understood is to ask them to repeat back to you in their own words, if possible, what is required of them to do. Again, you see, you are not just rote teaching them, but you are teaching them, you are giving them skills to understand how to process the information that's given to them and then how to present it in their own words. Then stick to routines. It's very important that you stick to routines. If there is any change in the routine, you need to make sure that the child understands beforehand that there is going to be a change in routines. Have a timer and say, okay, listen, in today we are not going to do this, but in 5 minutes we are going to do this. And then again, after 4 minutes, after a minute, in 4 minutes, we are going to do this. We were going to do this earlier, but now we are going to do this. So there is a change. And keep the repetition and the time very structured so that when the change comes, the child is able to understand and process, and most importantly, accept the change. Right, use visual timetables. Visual timetables, I cannot tell you how important they are. Most of our students with needs are visual learners, which is why when you speak to them, you have your flashcards, you have your prompting, which you do visually. So you realize that they process the information better when it's given to them visually and orally. So when you give them the information in 2 ways, in more than two ways, you find that they are able to better process the information and understand it. Use graphic organizers. If you can use graphic organizers, for example, if you have a task sheet that breaks down their targets into achievable portions, you will find that they are able then to regulate themselves to make sure that the tasks are done in order, right? Write key points or words down, right? Use mnemonics. Most of you are already using mnemonics in spelling. Do that with them. Teach them how to maybe to learn a spelling. Like for example, because a lot of students find that because it's a difficult word to remember. So what do? We use because. Big elephants can also use, can also something, I've forgotten now.
I can't remember. I know the one you're thinking of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Big elephants can also, anybody want to help me out? For because big elephants can also
The mnemonic to remember.
Elephants understand small elephants.
Thank you, Deborah. Hi, Deborah. How are you? So, so you can use that. You can say big elephants can also understand small elephants. So when using that, the children, the learner then starts to associate. Oh, right. Okay, this is how I remember it, and I found it very, very effective. Now, allow for alternative ways of presenting their learning task. Now, a lot of us are so set in our way that everything, oh no, you have to write it down. You have to write it down. I can only have you present it by writing it. No, you don't have to. You can say, listen, why don't you do a storyboard for me? Or why don't you do a video recording of yourself? Or why don't you tell me in a way that you're very comfortable to present, to sort of give me to show me that you understand the task that has been set for you. And then use cues. Don't be afraid to support and scaffold their learning. It's always good for them and their self-esteem to support them in any way that you can. If you see a child struggling, it's good to allow them to struggle, but they must only struggle up to a certain amount. More than that, it starts to erode their self-esteem. So don't be afraid. Give them some cues, give them the support, scaffold their learning. Use peer learning. That's the best way for children to learn. Use peer teaching. So for example, if you know somebody in class who may not be the best at literacy, but is really good at math, allow that child to teach or to explain a concept to the other child who may not be the best at math, but be good at language skills. So when you allow this to happen, you not only build on the self-esteem, but you also allow the children to work and process a concept at their own level. So these are some of the strategies that you can use when you have learners who are disruptive.
And I think I've got the old presentation, do I? Because this isn't finished. Let me just pop through and get the new one, because we have, sorry about this now, guys. We were just caught off guard. The Italian school, here we go. Just to find, I wonder if this is the one. We had one that's finished, because I think this is the right one, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, yeah, because we haven't finished the other one. Okay, where were we? About slide 3 or 4? Just loading.
If you just show them the first, skip this one and go down to,
because this was a long session, wasn't it?
Yeah, this was a long one.
Shall we go through the behaviors?
Yeah, yep, we can do that.
Okay, so there are different types of behaviors that we can see. So behavior maintained by access to items. Miss Mita, I'll let you do these ones if that's okay, because you created this.
Yeah, so if you go back to the beginning, I will run through it and explain to them.
Okay.
So, okay, so behavior. What is behavior? A what, why, and when? Next slide. Yeah. So a behavior is anything a living organism does, not just humans. For example, a dead man's test, right? So,
oh, sorry.
Yeah. So it's a dead man's test, right? So what we can do is, right? So what we can do is basically a behavior is reaction to anything. It's a reaction to anything. So anything, for example, if you were to prod a dead man, you would get no reaction. So that's not a reaction. It must be anything that is a reaction. Now, there are, next slide. Okay. What is the function of the behavior? Now, before I go on, I think some of you, or rather most of you, have now been doing ABA and done some basic ABA training, right? If you have not done, I would suggest that you look at a center and go and sign up for some ABA training, because ABA is gives you a very good understanding of behavior, although it's just a surface understanding, but it does give you the understanding of why a behavior happens. Behavior doesn't happen just like that. It happens because there is an underlying cause. Right. So what are the 4 functions of behavior and what are they? So they are tangible, escape, attention, and sensory. So when there is a tangible reason, it means that the child wants to access something. It could be a toy, but it's something physical. Now, in your classroom, have you seen a child having meltdowns and screaming when you have given them too much of work? That is escape behavior. That is very, very common. Then attention. Now, everybody says, oh, the child is screaming for attention because he wants it. No, attention can come in the form of positive attention. It can come in the form of negative attention. So when the child is screaming, and then you see we are all turning to look at the child, that's actually giving attention to the child when he is showing negative behavior. It's very difficult to stop behavior that starts because of negative reasons, right? That's something that is a big problem in the classroom. When a child shouts out, when the teacher says, put up your hand, everybody, and the one who shouts out, you immediately turn to the child because he shouts out. So if you can create an environment in the classroom where you can reward positive behavior, that will be a lot easier if you set the rules for that. Now, a lot of
the children, they really notice, don't they, Mita? Like if you have, say, the children who demonstrate really positive behavior all the time, and you're praising them every time, like, oh, that's great sitting, or oh, that's great listening, oh, you've done a really good job with your writing, or you've really helped tidy up. The other kids will pick up very quickly that you're supporting that kind of behavior. And it's really hard for children if you completely ignore a behavior. So if your child is really expressive, if they're shouting or they're acting out, if you completely ignore it, for the first couple of days, it will be hard for both an LSA and for the teacher. But the children will learn really quickly. If there's no response, they'll stop doing it and it works.
It's not working with the Prativasa.
Yep. Thank you, Deborah. You're right. If you reward the positive behavior, I think somebody needs to mute their mic again.
But ask.
Got them. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you reward the positive behaviors and set these rules in the classroom, it will make life much easier. So it's the same thing when you're working one-on-one with a child, right? Remember not to try to react when the child is screaming. Always the first thing you must make sure when the child is having a meltdown is to make sure that he is safe. That's the most important thing. Clear the area. If he's having a meltdown, means he has reached a point where it is going to be impossible to speak to him on a level where he'll be able to understand. So as I always explain to everybody, to reach a meltdown, you reach a certain point where there is no coming back. Of course, as an LSA, you must start to recognize what the signs are. You must also understand that, and you must also understand that you must not allow the child to reach that level. But unfortunately, sometimes you can't do anything about it, right? But that's okay. Once he reaches that point, he will come down. It's like a bell curve. He will come down. So when he reaches that peak, allow him make sure that when he's having the meltdown, that he's safe, everything around him has been removed, and he's having his meltdown. Let him have his meltdown. After the meltdown is when you try, first of all, to figure out what was it that triggered the meltdown. If possible, have a conversation with the child. Once you recognize the triggers, think of ways to prevent those triggers from happening again. Then, if you cannot do that, if you know that those triggers will keep recurring, you need to give the child skills on how to work with those triggers.
And Sheena very, very helpfully put in the chat, there's a really good mnemonic for the different types of behavior. She said SEAT, to easily remember: sensory, escape, attention, and tangible, SEAT. So take your seat. Oh, you have it, Miss Mita. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Thank you, Sheena. I'm glad those ABA classes paid off.
And the second one then is EAT. Escape, attention, tangible, and sensory. And there's a really good one for if a child has had a meltdown or has been exhibiting really negative behaviors. Think of STAR. So the stimulus, the trigger, the action, and the reaction. And if you look at those four things after every time a child has exhibited negative behaviors, then you can start to build up patterns. And it's really useful to keep a little diary because we forget sometimes. And if you keep a diary of, let's say, the time of day or the classes the child was in or the activities they were doing, you might start seeing patterns over the course of 2 or 3 weeks and say, okay, he always has a meltdown in math class, or she always shows sensory seeking behavior right after break time, or maybe after they've eaten a certain type of food or something like that. So a little diary with that STAR is really useful.
Okay, so you talk about, I think we can skip all of this and just go to the strategies because I don't want to go too deep into this. So these are all the types of
let's go down to types of behaviors. We've kind of gone through those. We don't need to do the theories. Sorry about this now, guys, because we got caught off guard, but the strategies are the ones we want. Now we started there. Had we done this slide?
No, I think this is a good one. Yeah. Okay, you can run through this.
I think we did, didn't we? We did break it up into manageable chunks. So these are literally practical tools you can use in your classroom. Now, when we say chunking work, there are a number of apps online. If you Google how chunking work, it does it for you. So if you have longer comprehensions or you have lots of math tasks, these apps or these tools online, they chunk them for you. And they'll put the pieces of work into nice manageable boxes so that your student has just one piece of work that they need to work on at a time. Rubina, we can see the ABC of the behavior before the behavior and consequences. Thank you. That's really useful. If you can learn to spot the behaviors before they escalate. Okay, so allocate individual goals. We spoke about that. Explicitly teach social skills. Now, this is particularly relevant for students who are developing language and students who are on the autistic spectrum. So remember, if you're just developing language, even as a 3 or 4-year-old, you will not have built the skills that we acquire through language and through the use of language pretty much all of our interactions are done through some kind of language, whether it's body language, whether it's visual language with your eyes, or through oral language. And if a child is very late in developing their oral language, their social skills will also be affected. So it's really important that we note that. Okay, if the student is easily distracted, allow fidget tools or ear defenders. Those ear defenders are brilliant. You can pick them up for 10 dirhams at Dragon Mart, or in Carrefour, I think they're maybe 20 dirhams. And you can decorate them, make them nice and attractive for the student. They're really, really useful in terms of blocking out noise. Another easy one are those TheraBands that you see at the gym. You can wrap those around the legs of your chair. If you've got kids who move around a lot and who are seeking a lot of movement in the spine, a TheraBand is a really good way to support that. Also, one, I don't know if you'll be able to see it with my screensaver. Can you see the wobble cushion? Hey. Wobble cushions are brilliant because they allow you to have vestibular movement. Oh, I have a TheraBand in here as well. I have them all. So they're really useful in terms of allowing a student to access their learning while still getting the movement that they need. And always create opportunity so that they can be successful. One of the biggest reasons that students check out from learning is because they feel that they can't be successful. When you talk to them, they say, oh, I can't do it. But if you have a situation where you can build up opportunities for them to show that they can do it, then you'll find that your student will be much more engaged and they'll build that confidence to give things a try, even if they think they can't do it. We can use fidget tools, ear defenders, set high expectations. This is probably the most important piece of advice that I've ever gotten as a psychologist. When you're working with anyone, whether it's an adult, a child, somebody who has a special need, or somebody who's gifted, if you set high expectations, your client, your student, your child will work toward achieving those high expectations. And it works every single time. I know I often say it, the book, The Secret, is devised all around the idea of setting your goals and setting high expectations. I wonder if anyone's read that book. If you have, put it in the chat. It's a book about visualizing your best self, and it's one of the world's most selling books, and it's all about creating your own future and your own idea of what's good. And if you as an educator or an LSA or a teacher, whatever role you have here, or a mother or father, if you set really high expectations, I bet you your child will work and strive toward meeting them.
Sorry, I'm just going to say what you are doing is that you are projecting what you believe that the child is capable of. So if you project the belief that I don't think you can do this much, then that's what the child's going to produce. But however, if you tell the child that, listen, I know how much you can do, and I have seen it happen in school time and time and time again. So I think setting high expectations is something that's really important. Sometimes people come to me and say, but this child has special needs. Why would I want to set high expectations for this child? And I would say, but that's the most important reason why you should set high expectations for this child.
I'll never forget working with a school here in the UAE, and the class teacher, we had a child in a wheelchair. There was no cognitive issue with the child at all, but he was in a wheelchair. And the teacher was like, oh, I'm differentiating his worksheets. I'm giving him much easier work to do. And I said, why? She said, oh, because he's in a wheelchair. I said, it doesn't affect his brain. It's his wheel, he's just in a wheelchair. He doesn't need easier worksheets. And we often see teachers will think a child who has different needs, they need easier work. That's often not the case. And sometimes it's the opposite. We need to challenge them even more. Like some of our dyslexic children are really, really intelligent and brilliant problem solvers. ADHD is often comorbid with giftedness. Autism has giftedness in very specific spheres as well. And you can see when you give a child a real challenge in an area that they are successful in, if they're really good at math, for example, then you'll see them thrive and they can be just mind-blowingly good.
Yes, thank you, Ramona. I agree with that. I think we've covered most of the points, Miss Catherine, and I think if there's anything else, is there anything else that anybody would like to suggest and bring and put forward?
Now, do we have, Deborah was saying children who shout out can have talking tokens so that you can give them, yeah, like turn taking, it supports them in taking turns. Rubina was talking about the ABC of behavior. Rubina, would you be confident enough to tell us a little bit more about that if you would like to? I know sometimes it can be a bit daunting, but we always like to get people to contribute and tell us their ideas.
Sure, ma'am. Good evening, everyone. This is
Hello.
Rubina here. ABC of a behavior is actually we are analyzing the child, what's happening with him. A means before behavior, what's happening, what is triggering him to have that behavior, and B as a it's behavior only. What the behavior after seeing that trigger, what the child is doing, it's called a behavior. And basically, it's what all the movement and what all the things the child is doing, that is called as a behavior. And after that behavior, what is happening, what he is going through, that is called as the consequences. For example, if it's a bad behavior, then what he's going through is a consequence, that is he is facing, that is a consequence. So basically we need to analyze whenever it's happening. Suppose I'll give you one situation. If the child is facing problems with the sounds, okay, and when you're sitting in the music class, you're thinking, why the child is screaming, why the child is getting disturbed, I don't know, he was sitting nicely. No, he's facing some problems by this loud music which is going on in the class. So we need to recognize what exactly. If suppose you're seeing that the child is facing problems, try to less put less volume, or do something that the child will be comfortable to sit in the music lesson. So this is called as a ABC of a behavior for a
Right.
particular.
Thank you, Rubina. Now, this ABC actually comes in a chart as well, the antecedent, behavior, and the consequences. And you can find the chart if you Google it. It's there on the internet. Download it, and you can have access to it. It's a good way to track the behavior of the child, to track what the triggers are, and then to make sure that you are aware, that the child understands that the behavior will have a consequence. What is the consequence of the behavior? So thank you for sharing the ABC chart, Rubina. All right, I think Ms. Kate, we're almost at the end of time.
Yeah, we're just about there. I think we can just finish up briefly with just run through some of these tools, and then as I said, we had a little change in our schedule at the end of the day today, but we've got 83 people already on, so it's good to see. Right, some of the tools to, oh yeah, for those who've joined a little late, my apologies. We had to shift, our speaker couldn't make it today, so we shifted, and we're just covering some behavior management tools. Mita and I are winging it today. So here, and with the support of everyone who's joined as well, which is great. So here are some learning tools that we can use to support students in promoting positive behavior. And one is a special learning space. Now, I know in a school, it can be a little bit tricky to find a space, but if you've got a student who really struggles with behavior, it's really valuable to find some corner, some little room anywhere that you can make specifically their space. And you can do it just by sticking up some of their work, maybe put a special sticker on a chair, something as simple as that, so that they have somewhere they can go that is really their own, and somewhere that is a calm and a safe space. These are really useful, particularly for children who have autism or those who are struggling emotionally, because it helps you to remove them from situations where they may be overwhelmed, and it gives them somewhere that is kind of removed from whatever it is that's overwhelming them. Like Rubina was saying, maybe the noise is too loud, maybe there's too much sensory information coming in. Another really useful tool are sensory aids. And these guys, you can pick these up at Dragon Mart. You can pick them up in Day to Day. They're pretty cheap. Theraputty is very useful. And those, I don't know if you can see them clearly there, but the tools that you'd use in the bath, in the shower, those brushes that you have, they're really good for sensory seeking kids. The children who you see might be pushing against the wall or who are always seeking out pressure points. Those
I have
brushes.
some of these. If you don't, I can show you all the Kuji ball and the brush you are saying.
They're brilliant, and you can pick them up anywhere in Daiso or Day to Day, wherever. And the ones that are really rough, some kids love them, but you've got to trial them very carefully first. I usually trial on the forearm, very gently, let the child see if they like that feeling or not. Always a reward chart, very easy. I think most of us are using reward charts all the time. Visual prompts for class. These are particularly useful if you've got children who are English as a second language or as a learning language. Visual prompts, because remember, sometimes we have young children joining us. They may have a speech delay, but they may also be learning English. So it's doubly hard for them. Always encourage exercise. Take lots of breaks, particularly for children who have high energy levels or those who have low energy levels who might be struggling with the intensity of a busy class, particularly in early years. We have choices boards, which are really useful for the child. Because remember, if you've got ODD of what's ODD, Miss Mita?
Oppositional defiant disorder.
Yeah, particularly those children who say no all the time. If you say, oh, will we go here? Of course they might say no, but if you say, will we stay in class or will we go to the quiet room? They have a choice, whether they like the choice or not, they still have a choice. And when a child feels like they're making their own choice, it's a lot easier to manage their behavior. Have lots of visual aids around emotions. Now then next cards, so that they know exactly what's happening in the day, particularly for children who are on the spectrum. They often struggle with routine. Communication cards, look, listen and repeat. And we will finish with the social skills. These board games, you can buy them for about, I think they're about 150 dirhams, and they are well worth every penny. There are a number of board games in there, and the kids really learn a lot, not just from the content of the games, but from playing them with other children as well. And I'd always bring a child who can model desired behaviors when you're doing the social skills games. Okay, everyone, it is just about time to finish up. If you have any questions, pop them into the chat. I can see Sheila has asked. Deborah,
Is this game on Amazon?
Are on Amazon.
Deborah, you can actually ask the school to order these from LDA. A lot of stuff you can find on LDA. So if your school is doing an order under, do you remember we had those catalogs in when we were in school? So we used to get those catalogs. One of them was from LDA. That's where you get all of this support stuff from.
And I can help you as well. I'll order them for you if you need them. Just remind me, because Deborah and I work together, guys. So Sheila, you're asking, how can we support a student who has stimming behavior, eating and biting? Now, always work backwards, Sheila. If the child is eating and biting, they're seeking sensory input. So try to counter that by giving them chewy toys. If it's an older child, I'd even give chewing gum, depending on what kind of policy the school has. Like a secondary school student, it'll be unusual. I'm assuming it's a lower grade child. So stimming with biting particularly is often associated with that kind of oromotor stimulation. So any kind of sucky toy or the blowers, anything like that, or even if you don't have them in the interim, use lollipop sticks. So very often they seek to stimulate in and around the front teeth and on the tongue.
Right. So LDA, sorry, somebody asked the question, where is LDA? It's not where LDA is. It's a, I think they're online now. If you Google that, it's a site to order books and toys and anything to do with this things to support special needs. But they are in the UK. However, if your school is kind enough, they'll let you order it.
We hope. Okay, everyone, thank you so much. We had such a good turnout today. I hope it's been useful. Let me put in the chat the link to the YouTube channel where you'll find all of the recordings of all of the forums from every week. They're all on that YouTube channel and they're free to access for anyone. So you can watch them in your free time.
Right. And once again, we apologize for the change in the venue in the topic, but I think this was also still very useful and I hope it served the purpose.
Inshallah. Okay, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Have a lovely day and we will see you next month.